Hello and welcome to You've Seen It Before, Movie Reviews, Connections of Mind, and welcome back to my reaction series on Season 2 of The Orville, in which I'm reviewing and reacting to each and every episode that comes out in Season 2, as well as giving some brief little analysis on where you may have some elements of this episode that may seem familiar to you and where they may have come from. So, that being said, without further ado, let's get into Season 2, Episode 4, entitled Nothing Left on Earth Excepting Fishes, which is a reference to a line in The King and I, the version with Yul Brynner, which is viewed in this episode and is referenced as part of the through line for this episode. And in this episode is revealed that Captain Mercer is still continuing to date an officer under his command, who I just realized I forgot her name, and however, it turns out on a vacation away from the Orville, it turns out they are captured by the Krill, and Ed Mercer is coerced into giving his command codes in order to save his girlfriend from being tortured, but it turns out that his girlfriend was actually a Krill officer who he encountered in Season 1 of in which he and Gordon had infiltrated that Krill ship and were forced to kill the entirety of the crew except for the children and this one adult officer who she has a grudge against Ed Mercer, and it was a personal vendetta with him. And however, the Krill ship comes under fire from another enemy of the Krill, and her and Ed Mercer are forced to escape to the surface of another planet, and they're forced to work together in order to escape this planet and these pursuing aliens. Now, as I've said in the past, that The Orville is very much a throwback series to Star Trek Gone Past. It's essentially a love letter to Star Trek, as Seth MacFarlane is very much into Star Trek as a whole, and he's appeared on a couple episodes of Star Trek Enterprise. So, and therefore, it makes sense that there are a lot of Star Trek references in this series. And this episode, I took notes that there are quite a few references to be made from the previous Star Trek episodes. For instance, let me consult my notes here. The fact that Ed Mercer and his girlfriend are abducted by an enemy on their way to a vacation is very reminiscent of Star Trek The Next Generation episode The Mind's Eye, in which Geordi LaForge is captured by the Romulans during his trip to Risa. The fact that this episode also features Gordon Malloy taking the officer's training test to become a command officer, very similar to the Next Generation episode, Thine Own Self, in which Deanna Troi takes the command test. Also the fact that a previously thought ally of the Union, mainly this officer whose name I also forgot, turns out to be an enemy combatant and a spy in their midst, is very reminiscent of the Next Generation episode Data's Day, in which the Vulcan ambassador turns out to be a Romulan spy who they end up returning to the Romulans unwittingly. The fact that Ed Mercer and this Krill have to work together to climb a peak in order for their distress signal to reach a ship in orbit is very similar to the Star Trek Deep Space Nine episode The Ascent, in which Quark and Odo have to ascend a peak in order to get their distress signal out. The fact that Ed Mercer and this Krill are enemy combatants forced to work together in order to escape a planet, very similar to Star Trek The Next Generation episode The Enemy, in which Geordi LaForge and a Romulan officer are stuck on a planet and they have to work together to escape that planet. And finally, there's even a reference to an episode of Star Trek The Original Series, in which when Gordon Malloy is going through a simulation on the simulator, the Orville's version of a holodeck, and has to navigate a diplomatic situation in the stipulation with a Krill officer, he makes reference to a weapon that will, when activated, will reflect any enemy attack on it against the enemy itself. And I'd say that's a very clear reference to the episode of Star Trek the original series called the Corbomite maneuver, which was very similar to when Captain Kirk makes the bluff of saying that there's a device on the Enterprise that will destroy any attacker that attacks the Enterprise. So, all that being said, there are so many different sources that the Orville draws from Star Trek in order to make its episodes, and which makes it such a great throwback episode series. In this episode in particular, I would say it was very interesting that they brought back the character, this Krill character whose name I forgot, and she. I was very interested to see that. I'm glad to see that she was not a one-off character from season 1. I'm glad that we got to see her again, and I hope to see her again in future episodes, because I feel like her and Captain Mercer are developing an interesting little rapport going, and this could be the beginnings of peace talks between the Union and the Krill. So that would be an interesting development in this series. Give them a opportunity to make a new friend and potentially open the door for a new enemy in the future of the series. And the fact that all these things being said, that we've seen all these things before, but the fact that they are packaged so well keeps it kind of fresh in my eye. And the fact that Gordon Malloy is trying to become the command officer is an interesting development. Obviously, in the episode, it's shown that he's not quite on the up and up as to why he wants to do that, and he doesn't have necessarily the best motives to do it, but that makes it all the more interesting. I hate to see someone who's entirely pure of heart go down this path, so to have someone who's a little muddled in their reasoning go down this path was much more interesting in my opinion. I love the fact that we're exploring new characters and deepening relationships between characters. I love the fact that we get to see Ed interact with another character that he's only dealt with in one episode prior. We get to see Commander Grayson interact with Gordon on a level that she really hasn't in the past, or at least not very much. So it's these character pairings that we get to see that are really kind of fun, and I really did like the scene when Gordon Malloy's in the doctor's office and having to do their holographic version of a Rorschach test. And even though given Seth MacFarlane's humor, I knew exactly what was coming, but it was very funny how they delivered it. So that joke kind of hit home for me. So there you have it. There's my reaction to season 2, episode 4. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Do you agree with my analysis? Is there anything I left out? Let me know in the comments below. And again, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate whatever audience I can get. Be sure to look for my reaction videos for the Orville Season 2 continuing, as well as this Thursday was also the start of Star Trek Discovery, and my reaction video is up right now as well. Be sure to look for that as well. And also this weekend of January 18th, be sure to look for my review of Glass, which will be coming out shortly as well once I see that. So thank you all for watching, and just remember, there is nothing new under the sun, and yes, you have seen it before.